What's up, everybody? Thralls Mellow here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you, and one that I've been eagerly awaiting because I'm a longtime fan of this band. We are going to go over the latest offering from Dark Tranquility, Endtime Signals. This comes out on the 16th of August on Century Media Records. This band formed in 1991 in Gothenburg, Sweden. One of the foundational bands, I would say, of the whole Gothenburg melodeath scene. This is their 13th album overall. I have been into this band, God, probably since Damage Done. Pretty sure that was like 2002, and that was like kind of like the big year where I got into melodeath and metalcore and all that shit. Shred and I actually went over their last album, Moment, which I thought was pretty decent. I've liked the more recent stuff that's come out from Dark Tranquility, but I kind of pine for the days, you know, way back. Well, I mean, not that way back. Like the mid-2000s era, I thought was really good. But with this new album comes a few changes. This is the first one with Christian Jensen on bass. He comes from Michael Stahn's other band, Grand Cadaver, which he has a lot of other bands. And this is the first one with new drummer Joachim Strandberg Nilsson, who is a former member of In Mourning, which is awesome, like progressive melodic death metal. And yeah, like going into this one, I kind of expected a little bit of what was on the last one, but honestly, this one hits a little bit differently.
Yeah, I got into this band around We Are the Void, Construct, things like that. I dated a girl, again, that was into melodeath for a long time, and she showed me a bunch of stuff, and I mean, I dug it. Melodeath, up until recent years, was never really my favorite genre, but it's grown on me. And this band, of course, being one of the most notable acts in melodeath, it's kind of hard to not hear this band. So, again, while I wasn't a big fan of melodeath, Dark Tranquility is pretty fucking good all around. So
yeah, going into this one, I kind of like knew what to expect because I don't think that Dark Tranquility was going to escape their sound. I mean, Michael Stahn's pretty much been at the helm of this project since the beginning, and he's always been like a heavy influence when it comes down to the writing. And this album, I would say, like, baseline just does Dark Tranquility really well. Like, all of the tropes of their sound are very much present. Michael Stahn's awesome gravelly vocals, his tuneful crooning, the band's just amazing use of synths and guitars and sort of weaving them together for atmosphere and harmonies. Songs that are mid-tempo and somber and dreary, and then songs that are explosive and energetic. This is just a well-rounded Dark Tranquility album.
And of course, I guess we should mention right off the bat, it's mixed and mastered by Jens Bogren, so you know it's gonna sound good. They definitely didn't slouch in any way, shape, or form in the production department.
No. Jens just has a thing about scope. Like, you kind of just tell him how large you want this album to sound. Like, oh, what do you want it to sound like?
Did big?
Yeah, or like, no, I want a drone shot sweeping over the mountains into a fjord by a waterfall. Cool, I got you, fam.
Yep.
Right from the rip with the opening track, Shivers and Voids, like, it is just an absolutely huge sound. Again, the way they like to weave back and forth with lush synth melodies and heavy guitar riffs, and Michael's often very gruff growls. There's a really cool dynamic that this band does really well in terms of, like, you know, the things that melodeath does well. They know how to write catchy, hooky, but heavy riffs. It stays very dark and somber for the most part on here. But even when they get to like a more bright, hooky chorus part, they often don't like milk it for like a poppy hook.
Right.
It never feels that way. It still feels very sinister, sullen, somber, dark, whatever the appropriate adjective is. Basically, they didn't take the later In Flames route where they just started writing these very sing-songy choruses. They're just like, well, that sounds like stock stuff I could hear on most melodic metalcore albums. Dark Tranquility kind of stuck with this whole thing, and when it comes down to atmosphere, it's always been more somber and dreary. Like, there's a good chunk of this album that I could say draws a lot of comparisons to Catatonia in terms of the atmosphere, the use of synths, electronic elements, the dropouts to, like, you know, softer noises and cleaner passages. It has that dreary feel to it.
The song The Last Imagination actually is a good example of that. That straight up starts out totally like a Catatonia song. You could have told me that they covered something off of Fall of Hearts, and I would have been like, yeah, that's it. Dark, dreary, doomy, definitely more atmospheric. Again, the usage of the synths and the guitars kind of play off of each other, and once again, it's it's the size of, several mountain ranges.
And while the atmosphere has always been just kind of just dreary, and namely that is due to the synths. And I have to say, like, when it comes down to like synths and heavier music, Dark Tranquility was probably like the biggest gateway in terms of that. Because most of the time when it came down to heavier music, if I heard synths in it, I was like, instantly turned off.
Me too.
But Dark Tranquility knows how to like utilize that as an atmospheric thing to make songs just sound bigger and more grand. Like they're not just chimey Christmas synths, like all of a sudden someone dubbed in like some Mannheim steamroller. I don't know if your family ever played that during the holidays at Christmas parties, but mine did, and I hated it.
Oh, my mom will play that crap year round. Dude.
Terrible.
No,
but there's a lot of different textures and moods they create with the synths. It's not always just the dreary feel. Like sometimes you get more proggy stuff. Sometimes it's a little bit more electronic. Sometimes it's just flat out gothic sounding.
Songs like Wayward Eyes and Neuronal Fire. Wayward Eyes actually has more of, I don't know, almost a proggy feel to it, especially in the bridge. Neuronal Fire is more of your dark, gothic, synth-laden thing. Actually, the synths kind of take a little bit more of a lead on Neuronal Fire. A little too out front for my taste, but they're still there.
But most of them they used to accent the big riffs. And man, this album has a ton of giant riffs. A Bleaker Sun in particular opens up with, honestly, I think one of the most savage riffs on the album. Mm-hmm. Big double time groove to it. It's just got this snarling kind of thrashy energy to it. But when you add the synths on top of it, you get this really cool melody. And the harmonies between the synths and the guitars in particular on this album, that's kind of across the board in here. It just makes the songs sound bigger, more grand. Mm-hmm. They just keep getting, more epic as they keep going on, especially with this band's penchant for making the last chorus pop a little bit more. And I like that. Like, it's repeated across the board on this album, but that last chorus, generally, it's as subtle as, like, a key change. But they just add a little bit more oomph to it just to kind of nail that last big hook.
Like the second chorus in Wayward Eyes. Like, the first one, for the most part, is very, like, clean toned, very, again, kind of bright. Although it's dark, it's weird. It's weird to describe that, because you're like, man, that's dark, but oh my God. It's kind of like that. But yeah, the second chorus, again, I don't want to say brutal, but it's just bigger. It's got more of a punch to it. It's more enforced, so to speak. And don't think this is all about dark and moody and kind of crying and whatnot, because there are still some bangers on here. Songs like Enforced Perspective and Unforgivable are downright bangers. In fact, Unforgivable is pretty close to thrash.
Yeah, lots of machine gun riffs, heavy syncopation, blast beats.
Yep.
It's a very just outright aggressive song, but it still manages to squeeze in that like big chorus hook. In fact, there's like a pre-chorus part in there where it slows it down and lets that chorus riff sink in before they just gussy it up and fucking make it even bigger. And one thing that I think adds a lot to this album that it's been kind of a more recent trope, or at least one that I think is repeating with more frequency in their later albums, is lead work. Generally in melodic death metal, I expect like lead melodies. Like In Flames been doing that thing for years, and then they stopped. But Dark Tranquility has kept up with that. And, just a good lead melody on top of a bridge riff, and of course you have like synth melodies too with them. But there are like legit really solid solos on here. And while they are for the most part shorter, they do add a lot to the songs, especially in terms of like the dynamics of the songs they're on. They fit really well. The lead on A Bleaker Sun in particular, first off, the song exercises a lot of just great dynamics. Again, the verse part, heavy. That opening riff means business, and it rides into that whole verse just heavy. It's urgent. It has a palpable energy to it. Big epic chorus, albeit it sticks with like harsher vocals, but it still has that sort of dark anthemic quality. And then when you get down to the lead section, it kind of feels like you're going to get like a heavy lead section, and it goes very intimate, and you have this more isolated, more clean sounding solo. And honestly, I think it's one of the prettiest moments on this album that's already loaded with pretty moments.
The song Our Disconnect kind of does the same thing. Great use of building. Starts off very spacey and very cosmic, and then builds little by little into these various like syncopated grooves. The lead just kind of tops it all off, being really, really tasteful and really well done and syncopated in its own right. The entire song actually is one of my favorites. Just a very well-written song.
Yeah, it drops out towards the middle, like around the lead, like it gives it, again, that isolated pause before building up into the bigger last chorus, which, again, these guys know how to, like, close out the songs with, like, you know, resounding anthemic quality. Even on, like, the more aggressive songs, like Enforced Perspective, there's an awesome tapping lead section, and he harmonizes with the keys, which it just sounds absolutely awesome. It kind of leads into the bridge with that. You know, it has the tapping melody, there's some cool turnovers, gets in the bridge, it's nice and heavy, and then it kind of rides its way out of the bridge into the last chorus with that tapping harmony again, and it's like, dude, that's just really catchy.
And remember now too, there's new guys in the band, and I don't want to say they change too much of their sound, but new guys bring about a different perspective and a different way to look at things. And the rhythm section in this band is really kicking ass. The drum work is actually really neat. Like, of course, he's solid and in the pocket a lot of times, but he also does a lot of really rad cymbal work. Songs like Enforced Perspective, and even the last song, False Reflection. And False Reflection has a lot of big open space in it. And to this drummer now, a lot of big open space equals really cool cymbal work. He hits, I think, damn near everything he has on that kit in that last song, and it just adds a little bit more flavor. Like, you can tell the band really is focused and is really, like, tuned in and dialed into one another.
And open space, in terms of how it's utilized on here, I think is really good, because generally all the open spaces are filled with, you know, synths or like melodies that are a little bit more like subdued. They're kind of in the background. Sometimes you get like an isolated vocal, whether it's harsh or clean, but they know how to use those open spaces, even in the heavier moments, like the big syncopated chugs that pop up all over this album. Generally they are accented by clever cymbal work or like a really good synth melody that is just kind of like floating on top of the riffs. This band has always excelled at that, so I really wasn't surprised with that. But the new rhythm section on here, it sounds, I don't know, tighter, a little bit more energetic overall. But I did have some issues with at least one song in particular. One of Us Is Gone goes for more like melancholic balladry, I guess you could say. It's all clean vocals. There's actually pianos, there's cello and viola. It sounds, you know, very depressive. It's rainy day, mopey music. Again, kind of big Catatonia vibes. But for me, it never quite got off the ground. Like, it's got like some nice melodies. It builds into like a big crescendo. Like, of course, the last chorus is huge.
Yeah.
But for me, it just didn't quite land.
I think it's because of how well all these other songs build, and like you kind of get used to every time that they build that it's going to go into something like big and epic. But in this case, every time this built to something, it's kind of like you said, it never really like went anywhere. It kind of like they were building, and then it plateaued, and you're like, eh. And then it goes back down, and then it builds, and then it plateaus, and you're like, eh.
And it's kind of the same vibe, or at least in terms of like the same style on False Reflection, though I think that song does it better with like less elements. In fact, there's only like two big parts to that song.
I think False Reflection was more about being somber but still being groovy, because there's a lot of groove that's again supplied by the rhythm section, and it's not necessarily heavy, but it's got more of like a
swing,
just kind of swing or swagger to it that One of Us Is Gone didn't have. And then furthermore, the cellos and all the extra stuff that they used in One of Us Is Gone, I think they could have actually put on False Reflection, and it would have worked a little bit better.
Honestly, listening to False Reflection, I was like, man, you know what, if you had just like, you know, just a cello, just some like just mopey strumming in the background, I think that would have added like a whole other level to that song too. It just felt out of place when One of Us Is Gone. And in terms of the pacing, One of Us Is Gone is like, you know, kind of the middle of the album, and I feel like it is just a little bit of a lull. But the back half after that
is loaded.
Is honestly some of the best material on the album, and I love the front half. The front half, I think, is really strong too. But yeah, where this album kind of lagged for a moment, it picked up immediately. In fact, you know, after Last Imagination, I was like, you know what, I could really use a faster, more aggressive song, because we hadn't heard one since Unforgivable. And then, boom, Enforced Perspective comes in thrashy, angry as hell, classic, just melodeath, heavy riffs, like very At the Gates-ish. I was like, yeah, that is exactly what I ordered when I ordered it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dark Tranquility. So overall, honestly, I gotta give this 4 stars. I like this a lot more than the last 2, at least. Maybe last 3. This kind of just does everything that Dark Tranquility does well. The production's excellent. The synths and guitars, once again, they're just weaving these constantly just awesome, lush, churning melodies. Like the transitions, the flow of the songs, I think they're just all well written. Even the one that I didn't really like, I gotta say it's still well written. I just, I wasn't into it. It has a good balance of more mid-tempo anthemic songs, faster songs, more introspective, dark, melancholic songs, even some proggier moments. This is a really huge album, and I really just enjoy just kind of everything they're doing on here. And granted, this is a lot of familiar territory. Like, if you were never a Dark Tranquility fan before, I'm not sure if this would win you over necessarily. Like, maybe some of the cleaner songs, because they're a little bit different. But pretty much if you're a longtime Dark Tranquility fan, yeah, there's definitely an air of familiarity to this. But honestly, this is one of those bands like, Cannibal Corpse and Immolation. I don't really need them to change that much. I just need them to be Dark Tranquility, and they are 100% Dark Tranquility on here. So yeah, if you're a big fan of just flat out awesome melodeath and, early In Flames, At the Gates, Hypocrisy, stuff like that, check this album out. Solid one once again.
I agree pretty much with everything you said. It's 4 stars for me as well. This album is very well done. And obviously, once again, being a Jens Bogren production, I already knew I was going to love it there. But there's loads of awesome riffs. The transitions, for the most part, are flawless. The drum work is rad. There are great dynamic and emotional shifts. It flows really well from song to song. And to be honest, really, there were only a couple of times where I thought the songs had some similar elements in them. Like, for the most part, from song to song, there's a lot of variety and a lot of great dynamics that keep everything sounding fresh. It doesn't often run into itself, except for songs like One of Us Is Gone, which didn't necessarily hit too hard for me either. I think there's some things they could have done to spice that up a little bit more, to make it more in line with the rest of the record and how each one of these songs is a big production and presents itself well. I think they just left out a couple things. There was a moment in Neuronal Fire 2 where I thought the synths were a little loud, but again, I'm also like this guy in the sense that synths in death metal or heavy music, period, don't often sit well with me. And I think it's when they are out in the front more and sound less like an added thing for atmosphere. Like, in the case of Neuronal Fire, it took on more of a melodic thing, and I was like, meh. But even so, that's not a really big gripe. This album is very well done. It's very well written. Again, if you've been a fan of Dark Tranquility for a long time, you're definitely going to latch onto a bunch of things and even going to have some, ooh, that's cool moments, because this is full of it. If you're a fan of Dark Tranquility or At the Gates or Hypocrisy or any of that stuff from the eras when melodeath was a huge thing, then you're really going to like this. Regardless, I'd recommend checking it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. There's also on our channel up in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats too, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below. Tons
of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal, album reviews, discography rankings. We've been doing a bunch of live streams lately. Thank you, everybody that's been participating. We appreciate it. Got some discussion topics going on. We've got states of metal. Is it metal? Is it not metal? A bunch of metal things, and we do it all for you guys because we appreciate you. We enjoy doing this, and it's you guys' participation in all of this that help make it fun for everybody. So thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Tons of content coming your way. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and thank you one more time because of all your awesomenesses. And we will catch you later.